Hello everyone, welcome back to my vlog channel. I think I'm gonna do like podcast style. So I think I'm gonna call this podcast thing the Chronicles, as a play on my chronic mental illnesses and everything else. I think it's funny. I wouldn't take it that seriously because that's who I am as a person. It's just funny to me. But on today's episode, which I'll name like episode 1, just because now I feel like starting this as like an episodic kind of thing of different topics, more or less different life experiences, as well as self-reflection, my goals, things like that. It's basically the Becca Show, which sounds really self-centered, but I like this kind of outlet. It's a nice little creative outlet for myself. But on today's episode, I wanted to talk about my previous relationship, as I was in a relationship with who I'm pretty sure was a narcissist. Not entirely sure. There was no formal diagnosis, of course, and I know a lot of people on the internet nowadays be like, oh, so-and-so is a narcissist, oh, that person's a narcissist. It gets thrown around a lot. But I firmly believe that the person I was with was narcissistic. And this is not necessarily I don't want to say like call out video or like a shame video to do that. I don't really like doing that, but it's more of a what I experienced and why I left, and basically a long-term self-reflection on that entire relationship, because it was really not the best one. And emotionally, it had to be the roughest, personally, in my opinion. But to start off, it was, I believe, 2 years ago? No. Well, kind of. It started roughly 2 years ago, towards the end of 2022. I had started a new job. I was in a relationship at the time, but things were not going well, and I was essentially just very tired of the relationship. I felt more like a mother in that relationship than a partner, and it was very frustrating. It took a lot of toll on me mentally and emotionally. Like, I felt like more I had a child than a partner, which you should never be in the position of having, I believe, unless that's what you're into. Each to their own, you know, but I personally was not about it. I was already planning on ending the relationship at some point because I was just tired of it. No matter what I did or what I told him, just wasn't, there were never ever results, and it was just constantly me repeating myself to the point that I was just tired. So I had started a new job, and I had also gotten my partner at the time a job at my new workplace, and it was going fine. It was nice being able to be away from him and like actually be my own person again. Then a little bit into me working, we got somebody new that started working there, and he was like the dark, mysterious type, very edgy. He was very much an edgelord kind of guy. And we started talking, and I was kind of like, oh, he's pretty cool. I eventually broke up with my partner that I was living with, and he promptly moved out, and I started seeing this new guy. At first, we spent a few months not actually being together, but like, I guess like courting is the best way to describe it. Just like getting to know each other and everything. And he also was seeing other girls on the side, which I didn't know at the time. I'm not the type of person to do that. I'm very one person solely at a time, and if things don't work out, find another person kind of thing. I guess people call that old-fashioned now, because this generation's version of dating is very weird to me. I sound old saying that when it's people in my age range that do that. But it was already red flags from the beginning, but I was very I'm very much the type of person that I just want love in my life. I want to be with someone. I know that shouldn't be someone's main goal, but a big goal of mine is to just be with someone who, you know, loves me and that I love them and all this. And like, my goal is to be in a relationship. Granted, that also can mean that I will lower my standards, apparently, just for that kind of attention. And so we spent like 3 months of this back and forth. I kind of was crazy. I definitely was like, I was crazy. I would like confront him about like girls he was talking to and everything, and he would do the whole like, but we're not even dating, blah blah blah. And I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna back up on the crazy, because like, you're right. And I was trying to keep myself in check because I do have abandonment issues, and I have a lot of issues involving relationships and getting close to people, which is something I have been trying really hard to work on. I've kind of gotten better at it, but it flares up once in a while. So officially, we were like at a bar or something, and I was just like talking to him, and he mentioned that he might be falling in love with me, which I was like, you know, about time. You know, we've been going at this for like 3 months now, and then we started officially dating. And I have a warped perception of relationships, and I think it's because I'm very much someone that gets engrossed into like movies and shows and books and like the super like romanticized like ideal relationship, which is totally unrealistic, by the way. And he kind of reflected that. Like, he would take me to dinners, he would kind of do spontaneous things, and it'd be fun. As time went on, I should have listened to my gut more. I was with this guy for almost a year total, by the way. Like, officially together like 6 months, but had been like hanging out and stuff for like 8 months or 9 months, something like that. He was very much quote unquote a man, in the sense of basically just controlling and needed to be in power all the time. I'm usually fine with letting someone kind of make the calls on things, but I noticed things, the way he was not something that I think was going to last long. I think partway through our relationship, because there was a day, I have a lot of self-confidence issues, I have a lot of self-esteem issues, and very rarely do I see myself as pretty or nice looking. I'm very critical of myself, and that's also tied to childhood trauma and society and all that stuff, and trying to mentally work through it. So there was a day, I remember we were going on a date, and I got all dressed up, and he came over, and I felt very pretty. I had on a nice outfit, my hair looked nice, my makeup looked nice, like everything was on fleek, as the kids used to say. And I told him, he asked me how I was doing, and I was like, I feel very pretty today. And I remember he just looked at me and laughed and told me to calm down, or to not get ahead of myself. Which, folks, think about it for a second. When your partner feels good in their own skin, do you think that's an appropriate response? I think an appropriate response would be, yeah, you are. Because I love whoever I'm with, I love with my whole heart and want to support and love them no matter what. And the fact that he dismissed my own confidence in that moment kind of started making me have a weird feeling. I tried to brush it off in thinking like, oh, whatever, like he's just messing around with me like he usually does. Okay, whatever. We went on a date, it's fine. Then it kept continuing. I'm somebody who, when I get very excited or something, I tend to raise my voice. Not in a yelling way, But if I'm very excited about something, like something good happening, I'll increase my volume. If I'm starting to get upset about something, yes, I do raise my volume a bit, but not to the point of shouting. I have been told by previous partners when I start getting excited about something to basically be quiet, which completely diminishes my excitement for whatever's happening. I've been dismissed a lot in my life. But when I get comfortable with people, I do the whole, like, friendly roasting, laughter, loudness, like all that stuff. Like, when I'm very comfortable with someone, that's what I do. I think it was a trip to Boston that he took me on, and we were just walking around, and I wanted to go in one direction. He basically said, no, we're going this way, and I was like, oh, but why not? And he got real upset with how I was talking to him. He basically said, drop the attitude, do not speak to me like that, which I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just saying I want to go over here, because at this point, it was like my first time actually walking around Boston, and I wanted to see stuff, and I didn't, like, there are things I wanted to do. And that made me feel incredibly small. And I am someone who's definitely felt small a lot in my life, and I try not to let it show. I try not to let it get to me, and if anyone makes me feel small, I'm usually like, you know what? No. Like, I'm gonna be me. You can fight me on it. I don't care. But when he acted that way towards me, I felt helpless. I felt incredibly small. I felt, like, worthless in a way. Which it took a hit. My self-esteem and my self-confidence took a hit, and at this point I was working on my self-confidence. I was trying to be more confident in myself. I was trying to be more confident in who I am as a person, and try to figure out my identity and my real personality that didn't involve other people, and just being dismissed like that was horrible. And so that trip was, it was kind of ruined at that point. Still did, like, some fun stuff. I got to walk around, but I just felt like a dog being forced to go everywhere where he wanted to go. Another issue that we frequently had was I should have realized he used very typical POS tactics, I'm gonna say, of a man who's not necessarily committed, not necessarily caring, and not necessarily there for you as a person. He frequently would not text me, which is whatever, because we saw each other very, very often, so the texting thing wasn't a big deal. But if I texted him about something that needed a response, I would just get no response whatsoever for hours to up to a day. And his response when I talked to him about it, which was not even a confrontation, it was merely me just being like, hey, like, why don't you text me back? His response was, I don't always have my phone in my hand. I'm not always on my phone. Later, after the breakup, I realized how much of a liar he is, because he constantly was on his phone. Whenever we were together, he was constantly on his phone, but if I dared to go on my phone, he would physically take my phone out of my hand and put it down. When he was obviously ignoring me and I wasn't just going to sit there, so I would go on my phone, he would physically remove my phone from my hands. Which, toxic, very toxic. And I joke that sometimes I'm toxic, but that is a whole nother level of toxicity. He frequently would just show up at my apartment for, like, whatever reason. I would be in the middle of something and I'd be like, what are you doing? And he's like, we're gonna go do something. And I'm like, I'm doing something right now. And he basically would be like, stop doing it and come with me. And like a dog, I rolled over and said, yeah, sure, okay. Because I was like, oh, I love the spontaneity. But then after that happening so frequently, that takes a toll on you, because then you do not have time for yourself. You're constantly not being able to start stuff because you think that he's just going to show up and whisk you away somewhere, which happened a lot. He basically got upset that I had guy friends. He got upset that I would talk to my guy friends. If I was messaging any of my guy friends or talking to them at work, he basically would be like, oh, you were talking to your boyfriend? remind you, I've been dating this guy for a while. And that was just not cool. So I stopped mentioning men in front of him. I stopped mentioning any guys. But he wouldn't stop talking to women. Like, I brought up one time that he was still talking to a girl that he had hooked up with before, and I knew that they had hooked up, and I brought it to his attention. I just said, hey, I'm not comfortable with you still speaking to her because, you know, we're dating now, and there's a history between you guys that is not desirable in my eyes. His immediate response was, if we don't have trust, we don't have a relationship, and basically said that he would end it right then and there if I wasn't cool with it, which sent my mentally ill ass into a spiral because, you know, who the fuck says that? And that was also a frequent issue in our relationship, was I would bring up things that made me uncomfortable, that crossed my boundaries, and he just would throw it back on me to basically be like, well, if you're not trusting me, then it's on you, instead of doing anything to help relieve my anxiety about certain things, which I think were valid. Like, I know I'm a little in relationships, but I'd like to think that they were valid things that were upsetting me or like making me uncomfortable. And this went on constantly. Like, sometimes I would just leave work as well. Another thing is, he had left my workplace not too long after he started, and I was still there. And there would be times I would leave work and he literally was sitting outside my workplace. And I would be tired and I had plans to go home, and he just would show up and basically be like, we're doing stuff. And I'm like, I'm really tired. And it just, like, super bugged me that he would do that. Like, he would just show up to where I was at just to do that, when, like, obviously he could just text me and be like, hey, do you have plans? But that was never the case. Frequently, like, it was just like his, I guess, I don't know if it's like gaslighting, but his manipulation of the situations constantly, like, really got to me and gave me a lot of anxiety. If I could not basically have feelings of my own and have boundaries, like, he just would constantly make me out to be the bad person because I had boundaries and emotions involving things that, like, bothered me. He also would never tell me anything about himself, and he'd always spin some tale about himself, which I don't understand, because I was merely asking him a lot of times just, like, to get to know him as a person, you know? Like, he knew a lot about me, but he wouldn't even tell me what his middle name was. Like, we went to dinner one time and I saw his card, like his credit card or something, and it had his middle initials on it, and I asked about it, and he got so fucking defensive about it. And it's like, dude, that is legally your name. What is the issue? And I just couldn't comprehend him, like, having an issue about that. And yet, like, pretty much everyone else in my life I know, I'm just like, oh, what's your middle name? And they're like, oh, it's so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like it's never, I really don't understand what the deal was. And I'd frequently ask him questions about just his life, and I never would get a response. I never got a clear answer. And it was frustrating. It felt like I was just like, I was with someone for a while and I didn't even know anything about him. And, like, it was just crazy. He also had no respect for my apartment. Like, whenever he came over and he ate something, he just made, like, a mess, and I'd ask him, like, literally, if I made him dinner, I would be like, could you at least put your plate in the sink? And he basically would be like, no. And, like, act like he was above it, and, like, I was his fucking maid. And I'm like, dude, this is my apartment. Like, I pay rent. You don't pay rent here. Have some respect for my space. But there was also a part of me that was scared to say that to him. He also, at some point, kind of relating to reason I had fear of him, is he never set boundaries with me And yet when I would set boundaries with him, he would get upset about it. But he basically said I would know what to do to not upset him. Which, my God, is that some abusive shit. That's some emotional abusive shit. Because then it's like you're walking on eggshells all the time. I didn't know what would upset him. I didn't know what would be okay and what wouldn't be okay. Basically, I was just like, I shrunk myself down because I didn't know what would happen if I upset him. And he also told me that if I ever stepped out of line, and I'm quoting him on this, quote unquote, stepped out of line, he basically said that he would send people after me. Mind you, I'm... What have I done to have that threat, basically? I was scared, and even after I broke up with him, I was scared walking around my city. And everyone I told, like, basically thought it was, like, funny that I believed it. But also, like, they weren't in that relationship. They weren't dealing with the emotional, like, burnout and borderline abuse I was dealing with. That, like, I was scared to leave because of that. Because I genuinely didn't know if he would send people after me if I broke up with him or something. So that... more or less those patterns repeated for a multitude of months. And at some point, it was like around, I think it was like start of February or something. Oh, by the way, for his birthday, I had taken the day off to take him out to dinner and stuff. And when my birthday rolled around, he couldn't be bothered to take the day off, which he knew my birthday in advance, and he couldn't be bothered to take the day off. And then, like, took me out to dinner, like, a week later or something like that. I can't remember. It was, like, between a week of my birthday. I can't remember if it was, like, before or after. And... it was like, whatever, like, I get it, people are busy, but, like, it just kind of reinforced, like, how unimportant I was in his eyes. Which, on a side note, my current boyfriend on my birthday pretended like he forgot my birthday because he was tired from work, and then we went back to his house, and he had bought me flowers, a cake, a multitude of gifts, and wrote me a very sweet card. So, you will eventually find someone who treats you the way you deserve to be treated. Because I cried so much, because that was, like, the first time I've ever had, like, a genuinely good birthday as, like, an adult. It was really great. Anyways, though, but I believe it was in... so I have the month of when I did this. So, in August of last year, there was it was around August, I think it was like the start of August or something. There was an incident that occurred that really bothered me. I had just worked, and he wanted to do something directly after work, which I told him I need to take a shower, you know, I need to do this and that, and he basically just was like, I gave you the time, I'm showing up. I had to run home because it takes me a little bit to walk home. I walked home, took a shower, was getting ready, and he told me to basically come down and let him in. So I went, and I was having, like, almost a panic attack at this point, which, for those of you who are unfamiliar, sometimes what comes with severe anxiety is irritability, which is something that I hate that happens, but I tend to go into, like, fight or flight mode very quickly, and I tend to get very irritated, and you can hear it in my tone of voice. I try not to do it. Especially now, I try to calm down and not project it, but sometimes it gets very hard, and I was very irritated that day. Plus, I was having basically a panic attack, well, on the verge of one, and I went to let him in, and I basically said really quickly, hey, like, I'm still getting ready, you can come up, but, like, basically, I'm not ready yet. And this man blew up at me in front of my apartment on the street. My hair's wet from my shower, I'm wearing a dress, I'm in my slippers, basically, like, he's blowing up at me. He was like, do not speak to me like that again, drop the attitude, or I'm walking away right now. if you ever speak to me like that again, I'm gonna walk away. And I'm like crying because he's basically just like threatening to break up with me right then and there. And like, I'm a mess. I'm crying. I'm begging him not to leave or anything. And then he basically like pushes me into my apartment building, and we go up to my apartment, and I get ready, and we go to like the park, and we fuck around the park doing stuff. I can't remember what we were doing, and then it was supposed to like rain, so we go back to my place, and like I'm still upset, and he does nothing to comfort me, like to fix this, like to help me with the situation. I'm clearly like still crying. Like, it's been like an hour. I'm still like on and off crying. I'm trying to calm down, but I don't know how to stop panicking. And he tries to get down and dirty with me while I'm still panicking, and I keep telling him no. And he just like looks so upset every time, and I'm finally just like, I have to do, like, now I gotta do the thing that I hate doing, which is giving in, which I did. And then in that moment, genuinely in that moment, I realized, oh my god, what am I doing with my life? And like, who am I giving like my mind, soul, and body to? Like, this is not something I want to continue. To have somebody not care about my feelings, to only care about themselves, to only care about the fact that they want to get some, and like is just acting like a child because I'm not giving it up. And like, he's the one who basically like gave me anxiety and caused this, and has no sympathy whatsoever for the situation. I was like, I can't do this anymore. So at some point, I had like some of his stuff at my place. I had like his laptop, I had like shirts, stuff like that. And I basically had put it all in a bag. I was intending of giving them to him, which I told him to do. And he was basically like, no, I'm just gonna keep it here. And I was like, no, take your shit. And that night, it was like a really rough night, because we were like talking and stuff, and he was like kind of bullshit comforting me. He was telling me, you know, again, like, there's no trust and whatever. And I basically was like, dude, like, I have boundaries, and like, you're not respecting them. And I'm literally just asking you to respect my boundaries. And he basically, he didn't directly say it, but he acted like he wasn't going to. So I was like, all right, cool. And then he was like, I told him basically like I didn't want him to spend the night or anything. And I basically gave him his stuff. And so I gave him his stuff. I think we hung out the next day. And I basically was like, had a plan in motion of to break up with him, because I was done. I was like, I don't deserve this. In that moment, I had like the self-confidence of a self-made woman. I was like, I don't deserve this. I will not tolerate it. I will not put up with it. I deserve so much better than what I'm being given in this relationship. So I think it was like the day after or something, I was literally at work, and I sent him this very long text. Basically, like, and I was being very nice about it. I could have been like, hey, you're POS. You're abusive, you're terrible towards women, like, you are literal trash, goodbye. But instead I was like, hey, like, we've had good times, I don't think this is gonna work though. I think we want two different things. As in, I wanted an actual emotional connection, and he just wanted booty calls. And I basically spelled out to him in the nicest way, like, I wish him luck in his life, I hope, you know, he finds someone that works better for him. And I sent it, made sure it's sent, and then I blocked his number. And this was right before I had to clock in for work, and then I continued working. But the entire time I was like, I was petrified for like a month, leaving my apartment, and like not knowing if he was gonna be at my door, not knowing all this stuff. Like, his apartment is not too far from mine, but I refused to go around the area that he lives, out of pure fear. Eventually that fear subsided, and I was fine. And then I think like a month or so after is when I started talking to my current boyfriend. Totally on accident. did not intend. I was like fully fledged, ready to just be single, work on myself, not deal with anybody ruining my peace, messing up my plans, you know. And then I went on a dating app and found my current boyfriend, and so far it's been very, very good. I've been going through some stuff recently, so the relationship's been like a little, I feel like I've been putting a strain on it, and I feel like there's a little bit of problems. But that's kind of what it is. We're also long distance, so there's a lot of issues relating to distance, which I will cover in another video about what's it like being in a long distance relationship, and my experiences so far with it. We haven't even been together a year yet. I think we're at like 8 months or something. But yeah, that was my experience dating who I think was, if not a narcissist, a egomaniac. Someone who just really liked being with women who were extremely submissive looking, had low self-esteem, who were easy to control, which I'll admit I was, clearly. And I'm glad I got out of it. Do I really want to leave the city so I don't have to be near him in any sense? Yes, absolutely, which is what I'm trying to work on. Because I'm still afraid, and I think I've developed some like relationship PTSD from it. And it's terrible. It shows up sometimes too in my current relationship, like almost a year after. It still shows up sometimes, and I still get triggered by things that I shouldn't be triggered by, like, just because of what I went through. But yeah, that's kind of my experience with that. It's not a fun experience. I'm glad it didn't, in retrospect to to the length of my life in its entirety, it wasn't a long relationship. However, so much of it was so negative that it has impacted me, unfortunately, and it's something that I am working towards to get over is a strong way of putting it, but trying to grasp the concept that not everyone is like that. And that just because I do have a very strong pattern in the people I've dated, not every person, including my current partner, is like that. And it's a lot of unlearning stuff and having to actively unlearn it, which it's not something that's easy, especially when you don't have resources or someone to talk to about it. You just kind of you learn. You slowly learn, and you have to check yourself constantly on it. But it's a work in progress, and it's something that I hope no one else goes through. And if they are going through it, they get the fuck out of it fast, because it will only get worse the longer you stay. Which is horrible to say, but it's true. It does not get better. You cannot change him. You can only change your own situation and circumstance in that moment, and that is to leave, have a good support group, have protection from said person, and just try to move on with your life. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. This is definitely like a much longer video than what I did last time, but there were so many parts to it, and that's me like summarizing. Like, there were so many things that I could have talked about, but those were like the major things that kind of made me realize, like, oh, I should GTFO, you know. But thank you again for listening. I appreciate it. I will try to post weekly, if not a couple times weekly. If I do daily, I'm gonna burn myself out, but also, knowing me, I might just do like a few times a week posting because I have nothing better to do, although I do have my orientation for my job tomorrow. And then I'm training for a month at a different store, possibly in New Hampshire. So I don't know how my schedule's gonna look with that, or how tired I'm gonna be, because it's gonna be a lot of traveling. But hopefully I can keep consistent with these. I do enjoy just talking, because I don't talk to people often, and this is one of my only sources of talking. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys!